Today's episode, I wanted to share my experience and the benefits I've managed to retain and share with you around cold exposure and cold thermogenesis. So, I grew up, going up to Lake Superior, and I suppose I got a little bit of cold exposure as a kid. But it was maybe 6 or 7 years or so ago that I discovered Wim Hof and learning about the Iceman, and I was very fascinated. And take it back, say maybe even 20 years ago, maybe even more than that, learning about Shaolin Kung Fu and the nature of the yin and the yang. You've got the hard style and the soft style. And the hard style is learning how to master your body and being really, really hard on it and learning where your threshold is so you can continually develop yourself and evolve. And so there's this Buddhist technique called Subo, which I believe is just another name for this activated breath work. But these monks would go up into high elevations into the mountains of the Himalayas, and then they would soak their robes in stream water, and then they would put it back on and do this breath work until they were dry, until steam was rising off of them. And so anyway, Wim Hof has a very, very beautiful story and his reasoning for getting into cold exposure and breath work. And if that resonates, I suggest checking him out. There's plenty of information on YouTube and the old Google. But yeah, it was, 2019 into 2020, New Year's Day. I went for a polar plunge with a buddy, and at that time it was more or less a bucket list kind of thing, and just see what we're capable of and hop in that cold water and try to submerge ourselves and get out and say that we did it. And little did I know that it was going to become a regular practice for me and how much I was going to benefit from it. And I didn't get into daily cold showering for at least a year or two, but that first winter I went a couple times plunging out at sea, promoting it to my clients and my friends, and created a little social circle around it, and it was so much fun. But these last 2 years I've been doing it a lot by myself. I moved back out to my childhood home as my father's caretaker, and I'm taking you to what I call my secret beach that maybe someday I'll host a workshop out on this lake when it's frozen over. But this is my little sanctuary, and occasionally there's people out here. There's definitely people out here in the summer months. But anyway, cold exposure. So to think that athletes use cold therapy localized for sprains and strains and inflammation, but when you think about reducing your core temperature by just a few degrees, your immune system is basically being forced to burn hotter to kill off any germs, viruses, or bacteria that might be taking over the system. And to think that our inner landscape is a very hot, humid place to be, and that's where germs and viruses and bacteria like to grow. So if you ever find yourself getting sick, maybe you had this same experience growing up. My mom would always bring me a lukewarm rag, meaning that it's not warm, but it's not cold, but that it helps reduce the surface temperature of the skin and help reduce the fever. But so with cold exposure, if you practice it on the daily, to think about reducing your core temperature, or more or less your heart, to have your heart either having cold water beating on it or that you're submerged into the water up to your heart. And by just 90 seconds, maybe as much as 3 to 5 minutes as like a maximum window for the health benefits from my personal experience and research over the last 5-6 years. But that, knock on wood, I haven't been sick since pre-pandemic. And I believe a big part of that is thanks to my practice with cold thermogenesis and integrating cold therapy into my daily. And many people think it's crazy. They couldn't fathom seeing themselves jumping in a cold hole in the lake or, cold showers. But once you get used to it and you realize what you're capable of, you actually start to crave it and look forward to it, like any other thing that you do that you enjoy. And so daily cold showers, I always finish my hot. I don't get like a runny nose or a scratchy throat or anything like that. I'm a little sniffly right now because I just had a chai latte, so that milk, that lactose has got me a little runny. But there's a lot of interest in what's being referred to as contrast therapy, where people will go back and forth from a sauna to a cold lake and back and forth, and there can be a lot of fun in that, and there's also a social dynamic involved with that as well. But I've learned a little bit from Alex Huberman, and if that name resonates and you want to look more into the research that he's done, he's very credible and, very scientific. But that if you go back and forth from hot to cold, the importance of finishing on the cold is stressed, because if you go back to the heat, you're back into a humid environment and your immune system is not going through the recalibration that is where the health benefits take place. So you kind of want to allow yourself to shiver a little bit naturally. And it's in that shivering where the immune system is strengthening. And now if you think about your spirit or your soul is like this inner fire, and something like cold can really zap that out of you, and you can feel so just run down and out of it. So there is definitely a very important threshold to pay attention to when it comes to cold exposure, and start with small doses. You don't have to do a lot to gain benefits from it, and you really get to know yourself through this kind of practice. And I'm sitting here on the bench and I'm thinking that I'm going to take you with me. Got my puppy just roaming and doing his thing. So I guess I'm going to get in the water here with you. So oftentimes I do my breath work separate in longer doses, but then when it comes to getting in the water, it's kind of just keeping it regulated, knowing how to breathe. And something as simple as breath, it's so easily overlooked and not really thought about, but it's the mind over the matter. I'm almost ready. All right, I'll be careful not to drop my phone. Puppy usually just walks. So I don't go plunging every day. I sure would like to, but every day I take a hot shower. I never ever skip my cold showers. And it took me over 2 years to really start to appreciate and enjoy the cold showers. feel like it's so much harder when there's just a million little bullets of cold beating you. But hopping into the lake, you kind of allow yourself to get used to it a little bit more. Let me try to read. I'm not sure what that comment is all about. Regulate the breath. Settle in. It's probably already been about a minute. I'm keeping my arms out. I usually do. I feel my spirit, my inner heat dampen a lot quicker when I put my arms in. But I do have my heart submerged. A little bit can go a long ways. So this is a natural high. You know, integrating the activated breath work, well, that's a natural high too. And to think in this world that we live in, we chase experience and sensation, but ultimately comfort. And how easy it is when we're comfortable to overlook how much we have to gain from being just a little uncomfortable. You know, you do the hard work up front, so naturally life's obstacles are a little easier. I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm whole, I'm free. I do this to live more fully. That if I'm willing to put myself into uncomfortable situations in a controlled environment, then naturally, when life dishes me challenging circumstances, my nervous system is that much more prepared and ready for what lies ahead. It is so gorgeous out here. And after that first 30 seconds to a minute or so, your body starts to calm down. Yes, it feels cold still, but you start to get used to it. So, I don't know what else to say other than give it a try. You don't know what you're missing until you do it. And I'll definitely be sharing more throughout this winter. We'll see if I have more live cold plunge sessions, but yeah, it's really worth looking into. I thoroughly believe that this is something that everybody will benefit from. And those that, you know, get cold easily or are always sick, well, this might be a great place to start with, you know, reclaiming your